Hey everybody, welcome to today's TPR live session. Today we are going to be talking about commonly confused, misused, both of the above words. So words that maybe sound the same or very similar or look very similar and tend to get flipped and mixed up all the time. So let's take a look at a warm-up as we always do before we get into it. Grab a piece of paper, pencil, whatever you want to write with to mark these answers down. We'll come back to this slide at the very end. So what we're going to do, or what you're going to do, is select the correct word inside of each set of parentheses to correctly complete the sentence. So the first one here, I am going to blank down. Just write down whatever you think is the word that is correct. I'm not going to give you any hints yet. So I'm not even going to pronounce the words for you because that might accidentally give it away. The next one here is my literature teacher blank my blank to Hamlet. And Hamlet should actually be italicized there. So just pretend that that's italics because we're talking about the play. Number 3, the journalist was deemed guilty of blank after she published a defamatory article about the politician. And 4, the stormy weather did not blank our plans. Okay, so I'll leave that up here for just a couple more seconds. Just mark down. You can write both words if you want. Just write 1, 2, 3, 4, and leave 2 blanks for number 2. And just give it a try now before we go through anything to see how well you do. And then you can compare your answers at the very end. All right. Today, here are the words that we saw again. These are the words that we are going to be going over today. There are so many words out there that we tend to mix up. But since we only have a little bit of time, we're just going to go over these 10 words. Okay, so let's begin with the first set here. Affect versus effect. Realistically, when we're saying these words, we tend to pronounce them the same. Is that going to affect you? Does this affect you? Will it have an effect on me? I say them the same way when I'm speaking, unless I really try to articulate the affect and effect. So it's pretty easy to confuse words that sound so similar. So let's take a look at their actual meanings. So affect, we'll start there. What does it mean? Well, most of the time, affect is used as a verb. It does an action, right? And it means to change something, to influence something, to have some kind of an impact on another thing. There are instances when you might see affect used as a noun, but we are not going to focus on that today because that's not where the common problem of confusion comes in. So think of affect as usually used as a verb and does the action. And then we have, we have the sample sentence here. I won't let your sour mood affect me. Okay, so that's your example here of seeing affect in action. Affect is your verb. Won't let it affect me. So now let's look at effects. And this is usually used as a noun. The effect is the consequence or the result of something. So that's one reason why these two words are also confused, because they're related. One is an action, and then the other is what happens because of that action. So we can look at that first sentence rewritten, the sample sentence, I will not let your sour mood have an effect on me. So if you notice in the second example, the effect is now a consequence. It's not an action. But I can use those same words in very similar sentences to convey very similar things. So it's pretty tricky. One way to keep it straight, quick trick, think A for action. Affect is that action. All the A's go together. And then if you want to go a step further, you can think E is your effect, and there are a lot of E's in consequence. So keeping it that way can help you kind of separate the two. So remember, A for action, affect is action. Let's take a look at the next set of words. So now we have allusion and illusion. And these words also tend to sound pretty similar when we're saying them, but they have different meanings. So they might be homophones, right? When you have two words that sound the same but mean different things. And it's going to depend on the regional dialect of where someone's at. Some people might say illusion, and others might really enunciate the illusion. The same with effect and affect. So let's take a look at their meanings. Allusion. That's when you have a reference to something. It might be direct or indirect. A lot of times you could see a reference to something in a song or in a book or some kind of literature. The reference could be to just about anything. You might have an allusion to a historical event. Like this sentence here, the speaker made an allusion to the Gettysburg Address. And you could also say the speaker alluded to. So there is a verb form of allusion. Allusion here, as used, is a noun, and alluded, if we replaced allusion in the sentence, would be the verb form. And then we have illusion, which is something that's misleading or deceptive. So in the image you see here, you might have seen of an optical illusion where your mind kind of plays tricks on you. You think that something is what it's not. It could also be a misrepresentation of the truth. So our sample sentence, adding mirrors to a small room can create the illusion of bigger space, of a bigger space. So there is two different words, very different meanings. Whereas the first set, affect and effect, are related in meaning, these two meanings are very, very different. And one quick trick here, you can think that A for author, authors sometimes make allusions. And a lot of times authors are alluded to. So if you keep all of your A's together, you can remember that the allusion thing is the reference, often done by authors or to authors, about authors. All right, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat box for anyone who's streaming live. So let's move on to our next set of commonly confused and misused words. Complement and complement. These two sound really similar. You, again, have to really say complement and complement, and it takes a lot of energy to distinguish the two. So as you can see here, whereas in the first two sets of words, the letter that was different was the first letter, here the letter's in the middle of the word that's different. So that one letter that can change an entire meaning of something can appear anywhere in the word. So let's look at the first one, complement, with an E. That means to complete something or to improve it or to enhance it. And you can see the image of a yin yang, the two kind of complement each other. They complete each other. They go together. So you might say something like, my shoes complemented my dress. Well, your shoes aren't talking for one, right? So your shoes aren't going to give you a compliment, which we'll talk about in a second, but my shoes complemented my dress. That means they went well with it. They went together. Maybe they accented it, the color of the shoes and the color of the dress. They just went well together. Whereas a compliment with the I in it, that's when you're expressing admiration or flattery or some kind of praise. So you could say, my friend complimented my dress. Now it's a human being doing that action, complimenting. And in both cases, I'm talking about a dress, but the sentences are saying very different things. And complement can be nouns or verbs. You can have a compliment to something, or you can be given a compliment, or like in the sentence here, complimented as an action and the other complimented. So one way to keep these two straight is to think about the complement, the first one. It has C-O-M-L-E, like complete. So think of it as completing something. All right. Next set of words here, libel and slander. So not all the words that tend to get mixed up sound similar. Libel and slander are pretty different. But for whatever reason, people tend to mix them up because, well, their meanings are somewhat similar. So libel, what is libel? Well, it's written defamation, and defamation is the idea that you're causing harm to someone's reputation. So, for example, the advisor explained that the student would be guilty of libel if he published defamatory lies in the school paper. So if it's written, it is going to be libel. And we're going to see a trick for remembering this in just a second. Okay, I see DARP in there. These are similar. How can I remember them? I am not sure which set of words you're speaking of. So if you could just clarify DARPin in the chat box, so Marcy can send over which set of words, if it's libel and slander or a previous set, and I'll address you. Until then, I will keep going here. So we saw libel, and now we see slander. The difference here, now we have spoken defamation, and again, harm to one's reputation. So one is written and one is spoken. So our example for slander is the candidate was accused of slander because his speech contained false statements that damaged, oh goodness, there's a typo here, her opponent's reputation. So the gender of the pronouns disagrees here, but we'll say his and his, or her and her. So the idea, what we want to focus on, is that the speech is spoken, and that's our slander. Okay, and what is a quick tip? Well, oops, if you think of the library, library starts with L, and so does libel, and you find books in the library. And slander starts with an S, and spoken starts with an S, so those two go together. And okay, I'm looking here in the chat box, and I see that somebody, okay, Darpin, you're saying it was the previous one. Okay, so I just corrected this here. We have a little his going over that typo. We'll pretend that that's correct. Okay, so just to recap here, L for library, libel, because libel is written, just like books, and S, spoken, slander, even speeches and speaking, all of that start with S, so they all go together. And let me go back to the previous slide where Darpin was asking about complement and complement. Okay, so the E is the only difference, the E versus the I, right? We have the E here and an I here. So if you remember that complement with the E is like the word complete. You could think of the example of my shoes complemented my dress, like the shoes completed my outfit. It just put it all together and it all went together. Or like the yin and the yang, the way that the colors and everything go, they complete each other. If you like math, you can think of complementary angles. They add up together to complete a 90-degree angle. So there are lots of little ways, but just focusing on the part of it completing, and the word complete having the E, and complement having that E right in the same place as complete does. Just let us know, Darpin, if that makes sense. And if not, I can clarify a little bit further. So I will go ahead and move on in the meantime, but feel free to let us know at least that everything's good, or if you still have any questions, we can go there too. All right. So I give you a preview too quickly of the next one, but let's go ahead and look at lie versus lay. This is a really, really tricky one. And I'm calling it the grand finale because it is one that so many people just confuse. Lie, lay, what do I do? And the words are very similar. They're both 3-letter words, and they're usually tricky because we tend to misuse them by accident, not even realizing it. So to lie, it literally means to lie down or rest or stay somewhere, to be in a horizontal position. So these folks here, let's lie down on the grass. They're lying down, and there's no direct object. So this is one thing that's going to help you to remember lie versus lay. And I'm not going to get into a whole thing about direct objects today, but you can say, I lie. And you know what? That can mean I lie and I'm being deceitful. Or I can say I lie and my body is horizontally down on a bed or a bench or the grass. Okay, nothing has to come after it. And there is no object. It's not taking an object. Whereas lay, this is what you're putting something down. You're placing something. You're setting something down. I can't say I lay in the present tense. And I'm clarifying present tense. You'll see why in just a moment. But if I say I lay and I intend that in the present tense, I got to tell you what. I lay down the pencil on the desk. I lay down something. So it requires something to be physically put down. So I could say, will you please lay the bowl on the table? And a lot of times lay, it implies that you're doing something very carefully. You're gently, you're not slamming the bowl down, you're just laying it down. Okay, this is a tricky one for the quick trick because it gets so complicated with the lie and the lay and the different conjugations thereof. But one way to think of it is, as I said, when I first introduced lie to lie, I can say I lie, meaning I'm telling a lie, or I can say I lie as in I'm lying down. I lie on the grass, and it doesn't have anything after it. Whereas in the present tense of lay, you always have to have something after it. So think of it like that. Even if you don't know what object is, just know that you can't say I lay or you lay in the present tense without having something come after it. It's tricky. And let's actually take a look at where it gets even more complicated. So the 2.0 of the lie versus lay and our actual grand finale here. Final set. So if you look at all of these words, break down this chart for you so it makes sense. The infinitive, or the form of the verb that has the to plus the verb base, to lie and then to lay. So these are the pronouns that go with it. So in the simple present tense, which we just looked at, I lie, you lie, we lie, they lie, and then it changes in the third person. So he lies. And when we get to the past tense, we suddenly lie becomes lay, and that's where it gets really tricky because I lay the paper on the desk, but I could say yesterday I lay in the grass, and they mean two different things. We're dealing with two different tenses, and that's where it gets super tricky here. So definitely take a look at your verb conjugations to make sure that you know these ones because they have so much overlap. I see a comment here. Yes, another definition of lie is to not tell the truth, right? So when I said if you deceive someone, that is to not tell the truth, to misrepresent something. Exactly. And that's where when I say I lie or he lies in the present tense, remember, you could be saying that somebody's misrepresenting the truth or not telling the truth, or that that person is horizontally reclining somewhere or on something. So those two go together, and neither takes an object. Okay, so for this particular part where you're looking at the lie versus lay, the best thing to do is really just study your verb charts and pay attention to where things are at. You could write practice sentences for yourself, just write them, use them in sentences. Make a conscious effort when you're talking to your friends or to whomever to make sure that you try to say the right form of lie or lay, depending on what tense you're using. Okay, so let's look at a few sample sentences here. I'm not sure whether my absences will affect or effect my final grade. So think about this now. We've seen all of these words that we're about to see already. Affect or effect. So you want to ask yourself, remember, is it a noun or an action? Take a second. And in this case, you're dealing with it will blank my grade. So usually when you have the word will, it's followed by a verb. And that means it's going to be affect. Oops, there we go. Okay. And I will come back, Valentina, to Lane in a moment after we go through these things. Okay, so let's look at the next one. And this is actually, it should not be there. So we'll skip past that one and take a look at number 3. So do you think the marble countertops will blank the tiles on the floor? So take a moment there to think about the E versus the I in complement and complete. What is the difference there? Is it going along with something, or is it expressing some kind of flattery? Do you think the marble countertops will blank the tiles on the floor? So, do you think the countertops are gonna say, hey, floor, you look great? Probably not. If it were a Pixar film, maybe in some kind of animation, but in real life, our countertops don't usually talk to the floor. So there's one. Also, complement, it means to go together to complete it. So if you're thinking about designing your kitchen, are the floor and the countertops going to match and go together? So for that, we want to go with the complement for complete. So we're looking for the one with the E in it, which is our first one here. All right. Number 4, his interview was said to libel slander, was said to cause libel or slander to his opponent. So if it's an interview, what do you think this is going to be? This is a tricky one because this sentence doesn't actually tell us whether it was an interview that was typed out or spoken. So technically, depending on the actual context, this sentence could require libel or slander. So because we don't know, we can't actually answer this one. But if it were an interview with the press on TV, on a news network, that would be slander. And if it were some kind of interview that were conducted via chat or WhatsApp or Signal or some other one of these applications where you're typing, that would be written, so it would be libel. And then lie and lay. So lie or lay that paper on the counter. So take a moment to think about this one. Lie it down, lay it down. So you want to ask yourself which one has the direct object. Is it the lie or the lay? And do you have a direct object in the sentence? And yes, I can go over libel and slander again once we get through this part. So lie and lay, we're doing something to something, right? It's not about being horizontally reclined in a horizontal position. So for this one, I'm gonna say lay that paper on the counter. Lay that paper on the counter. Okay. And then a last one here. Yesterday, my puppy lay, lie, laid, or lain. This is your bonus challenge. So take a moment to think here. What tense are you dealing with? It says yesterday, so we want to use past tense. So think about anything you can eliminate that might not be in past tense. And then think back. Think which one is going to work here. Okay, so the final answer for this one is going to be lay, because my puppy lay down yesterday. And that's a good place to go back to what Valentina was asking. How can I use laying in a sentence, or what's an example of laying in a sentence? Okay, so let's jump back and take a look at that chart again so you can have it all in front of you. Okay, so the word we're looking for is laying. Laying is a past participle. So laying is the past participle that goes with to lie, which is the intransitive form. I lie down horizontally. And you could say, I have lain down. I had lain down, she has lain down. You're gonna have some form of the verb to have, and this is gonna form a different tense. It's not your simple past. It's gonna be one of the other more complex tenses. So I could say, I have lain on this grass for a long time, for example. So you always have to have a word in front of it when you're dealing with a past participle. And then you're looking at the present participle, I am lying, I will be lying. So that's going to be some form of the verb to be, some conjugation. And there are 12 different tenses. I'm not going to get into all of them today, but you could definitely pull a verb chart too and see how it all sort of fits together. So Valentina, let me know if that makes sense or if you have any further questions about Lane and how to use it. And frankly, it sounds pretty funny. All of the lay, lie, lean, lying, laying, it's because we tend to use them so incorrectly and with the past participle forms so infrequently that it just sounds funky to our ear. And Maya asked about going over libel and slander again. So before I reveal the answer to the beginning of the quiz, I'll jump back to that. So libel and slander, let me grab that slide just so we have it in front of us again. Libel, remember, is the written form of some kind of defamation. So if somebody's saying something mean about another person or lying about them or saying, trying to harm that person and it's written, that's libel. Remember, L for library, because books come from the library and they're written. And then slander is the spoken form. So they're both doing the same thing. They're both causing some kind of harm to somebody's reputation. It's just the way or the form that it's being done. What was that? Maya, just let us know if that makes sense now. So it's really the manner and the forum or the type of place it was done and so forth. And then Charles asked, what's the difference between the simple past and the past participle? So the simple past tense, and I'll jump back to the slide with all of those fun verbs. The simple past tense is just a completed action, something that happened. It's one of the most common past tense forms because we have things called simple past tense. We have the progressive or continuous past, which is like I was lying. Again, I'm not going to get into all of the tenses today. You have the past perfect, you have the perfect progressive past, and they're all different variations. So the simple past is when you're just talking about something that happened yesterday or the other day at a certain point of time, versus the past participle is used to form the other tenses. So I could say, let's say, by tomorrow afternoon, I will have lain on this grass for 14 hours straight. So I'm using that past participle to form the tense. Does that make sense? And I'll let you guys go ahead and jump in. If there's anything that doesn't make any sense, please feel free now to jump in. I know the lay, lie, lane, all of that is totally confusing sometimes. So the more you practice it, really, if you just write down, give yourself the challenge of, say, I'm going to write a sentence using lie and lane, all of these tenses, and I'm going to try using that participle, the present participle and the past participle. Try to commit that to memory. Okay, so Cheyenne says participle is not a tense, but the simple past tense is you can say I laid. You can't say I laid. Yes, Shannon, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Cheyenne, that's very correct. The simple past, I didn't put the word tense on here, but it is a tense and the past participle is used to form a tense. So that you can say I laid if you're talking about the verb to lay, just to clarify there. So laid is the simple past tense form of to lay. That's why this is so tricky because these words are so similar and they mean different things. So if you say, I laid on the grass, that's not correct. So to say, I lay on the grass. and it sounds really funky, right? Even when I say it, I know it's grammatically correct, but I'm talking about yesterday I lay on the grass. That's actually how you should say it. Okay, so any other questions, go ahead and place them in the chat box. And if you have questions after this video stream, feel free to put them in the comments after the video. But let's go ahead and jump to our warm up. Let me go through these quickly because I don't want to reveal the answers too soon. So we saw all these words several times now. And we're going to go back to that very first slide we saw. Okay, so the first one was I lie down. Okay, because I myself am lying horizontally down. So congratulations if you got that right. If not, hopefully by now you understand. And again, type in those questions if you have them with lay versus lie. The second one was a double whammy. We had 2 words to choose. So number 2 is my literature teacher complimented with an I, right, to flatter or to give praise, my allusion to Hamlet. Allusion because I alluded to that person. And my teacher said, hey, great job. Number 3, the journalist was deemed guilty of libel after she published a defamatory article about the politician. So because it's published in written form, it's an article, that's libel. And finally, the stormy weather did not affect our plans. We could say it did not have an effect with an E if we were to use that as a noun. Okay, so I will hang out to answer any questions for anybody who still has questions. Thank you guys all for tuning in. So feel free to type now any outstanding questions. You know, there's a slight lag, so I'll hang tight for just a few moments here. And give yourself a challenge. Challenge yourself to use at least a couple of these words today. See if you can use some of these words with your friends or your family, especially ones that you might not have known before today. And that'll really help you. The more you use the words, the more second nature it becomes to use the correct version. Okay, and I see some typing, so I'll just wait to see if that is a question. Can I put the last slide? Sure. There you go, Maya. Libel is defamation or something that is written to hurt somebody's reputation. A lot of times you'll see it in politics or when there's some kind of a conflict between people. If somebody wants to hurt somebody else and they write something, it would be considered libel. There are very specific situations on what's libel and what's not. If you Google and you look up all the specifics, you can go down a wormhole. But when you're thinking about defamation specifically, and you know something is defamation, the written is libel, and Astano, the spoken form is slander. Okay, and I see some more typing there, so just wait for the next comment to come in. No new questions. All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. And if you think of something later after the fact, feel free to type it in the comment section below the video. And thank you all again for tuning in. See you next time.